Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to 10th class Social Studies. In today's class, we discuss about the national liberation movements in Vietnam. So, the liberation movement in Vietnam is peculiar as they were forced to fight against two colonial masters. So, it's very evident from the title itself, Vietnam against two colonizers. So Vietnam was colonized by two colonial masters. So in course of their liberation, the beginning they fought against France as they identified that to defeat France they need the external support of some other nations. They got it from Japan. But once the Japan was able to defeat France, Japanese government tried to control the day-to-day affairs of Vietnam. And later stages, Vietnamese people wanted to fight with Japan in order to complete their independence. So their liberation movement was very peculiar as they were forced to fight against two colonial masters. Okay, and there are certain similarities between Vietnam and India. In India, British established a kind of political control by bringing the local governments under their influence. In the same way, French government was able to bring the Vietnamese government under their direct control. Or in other words, we can say that the French government made the Vietnamese government just like a puppet in their hands. So whatever the French government wanted to establish, they tried to establish those things through the so-called or legal Vietnamese government. So in a kind we can say that Vietnam got colonized in the same way that India got colonized by the British. Then from this topic, Vietnam against two colonizers, in today's module, we are just discussing two small topics: exports, landlordism and peasants, and the civilizing mission. Only two small topics are discussing here. So Vietnam being an Asian country, almost all the Asian countries at that time in mid 19th centuries, at that time almost all the Asian countries were agricultural nations. Vietnam was not an exception. Vietnam was an agricultural nation. Okay, so Vietnam was considered by the French as a nation that can supplement their income, or they just considered Vietnam as a financial source, and they tried to develop the agriculture of Vietnamese because that was the main cause of economic activity in Vietnam. So they were sure that the French government was sure that their economic development or economic resources will be developed only when the agricultural activities of Vietnamese people gets developed. So they tried to develop the agriculture in Vietnam, and for that purpose, for developing agricultural activities in Vietnam, they introduced a threefold strategy. Three important initiatives were taken by the French government in Vietnam. A threefold strategy that improving irrigation facilities, then encouraging landlordism, and facilitating marketing availability. Okay, so three strategies were initiated. First one, improving irrigation facilities. We know that without irrigation and without the supply of water, no agricultural activity will be possible. And the next one is landlordism, promoting landlordism. Here you should remember one of the major plank of Stalin's economic development, collective farming. At that time, we discussed that Joseph Stalin, he devised a program of collective farming, brought up small farms into a single piece of land. So when the landlords were given charge of associating all the smaller pieces of land together, they can introduce better agricultural activities. So that was the second strategy, promoting landlordism and marketing facilities. Even after the improvement of agriculture, if you are producing a lot and if you cannot sell it, if you have no chance of selling it, there is no use of production. Imagine that many of the people from Andhra Pradesh comes from agricultural background. Just imagine the situation that you people are promoting something or you people are producing something, and after the production you find there is no marketing facility for that, or there is no price for your products. Will you cultivate the same thing for the second year? No, we will stop it. So three strategies or threefold strategy was initiated by the French government. Okay, improving irrigation facilities, promoting landlordism, and providing marketing facilities. And for the promotion of agriculture, they started constructing canals, especially in Mekong Delta region, one of the very fertile areas of Vietnam. So they constructed a large amount of canals for easy provision of water or easy irrigation facilities. And by 1931, see, within a short period of time, by 1931, that Vietnam became the third largest exporter of rice in the world. And along with that agricultural development, they have taken some kind of infrastructural development. Roads were established, rail networks were established. And that road and rail network were established mainly for transportation facilities, for the movement of goods and garrisons. Garrisons are related to the military camps. So for all those kind of activities, we can see that the transportation is very essential for the development of a nation, and the movement of goods and the movement of troops. For that three purposes, they introduced or they developed that rail and road network. And at the same time, they have taken up a kind of trans-Indo-China rail network for the southern regions of Vietnam. In order to connect to the southern regions of Vietnam, they have brought up a kind of trans-Indo-China rail network. And the colonial economy of Vietnam was based on rice and rubber, two major agricultural products of Vietnam, rice and rubber. And rubber plantations were owned by the French mainly, and very few Vietnamese elites who supported the French government. You see? Only two group of people had the control over the rubber plantations. Either they belongs to French government or the French nations. And the second one, the Vietnamese, but who supported French. So in short, we can say that the entire rubber plantations were under the control of French, directly or indirectly. It was everything, all the rubber plantations were brought directly under the control of France. And in rubber plantations, they introduced a kind of bonded labor. They were forced the laborers to work with the very least amount of salaries or payments. And no industrial development was taken up by the French. Industries were never developed. And the local landowners, with the support of the French government, they just captured the land from the small peasants. And these small land owners, they became tenants. And the tenants were brought up in a kind of cycle of debts. As a result of usury interest rates of the landlords and exorbitant land rates, suffocating taxes, the standard of living of these tenants has been drastically decreased, and the taxes were imposed on these tenants at will of the local elites, means the local landowners. That was the situation. And the economic situation of Vietnam during the period of 1930s is very evident from a small statistics. We can see that how many of the people from three major cities of Vietnam were landless by 1938. Annam, 53% of the people in Annam were landless. In Tonkin, 58% of the people were landless. And in Cochin, China, 79% of the people were landless. Then one more observation is there. Majority of landowners were starving in 1930s. What is the specialty of 1930? It is a time of Great Depression. Majority of the landowners were starving in 1930s. Then you just think about around 53% of people who were landless in Annam, 58% of the people who were landless in Tonkin, around 79% of the people who were landless in Cochin, China. What could be their situation? If majority of the landowners were starving in 1930s, it is better not to discuss anything related to landless people. That was the economic situation, and that was the financial situation of the people in Vietnam. So sure, there is a chance for the people to fight against the government. Here the government is Vietnamese, but the problem is that Vietnamese government is under the control of France. So the people will be fighting against the Vietnamese government. Eventually it will be against the French government. Okay, let it be there. We'll come to the next topic, civilizing mission. What is civilization? It's a way of behaving. Civilization. The culture, tradition, and everything comes together to be called as civilization. The French people, they just thought that the Vietnamese culture is not polished, or they considered the Vietnamese are uncultured people, uncivilized, like the British thought about the Indians. The British government or the British nationals, they considered Indians as uncivilized people. In the same way, the French people, they considered the people of Vietnam as uncultured. So, they considered, or they just felt that it was their duty to civilize the people of this uncivilized Vietnamese. So, civilizing mission. And how? Or what is the base of civilization? Enlightenment. Education. Education is the best way to enlighten a group of people. So, they decided to introduce education in Vietnam. But the problem is that, sure, education will enlighten us. If we are enlightened, sure, we will question about the social injustices. Why it happens? We know that in India, while you studied about the Indian national liberation movement in earlier classes, we can see that majority of the national leaders, they were highly educated, and they questioned the injustices of British government. They just encouraged the people, inspired the people to fight against the injustices. So sure, the French government was aware that if they are providing education to the people of Vietnam, sure they will be questioned. There will be questions from the part of Vietnam. So what they decided? They decided to provide education, the primary education through Vietnamese language. And the higher education was limited only in French language. And even if it is in the Vietnamese language, the textbook was prepared by the French government and was taught by the people under the vigilant eyes of French government, and the textbook just glorified the French. They said that whatever the things are done by the French government or the French people in Vietnam is great. So they just limited the spread of education, but no one can spread the education. Okay, if a person is able to read and write, we cannot limit that a person to read only one particular book or one particular topic. If I am able to read, I can read whatever is written in that language, and I can collect as much as the wisdom and knowledge from any source through my language. So the same thing had happened in Vietnam. The people who got educated, primary education either through Vietnam or higher education through French, whatever it is, they continued their studies. And they identified that their land is brought under the control of France from some other continent, and they did not find any relevant reason why they are being mastered under the French government. So they started questioning about that questions, about the way how the education helped them to revive their nationalistic spirit and all. We will discuss in the next module. Thank you.